Hello on this Wednesday at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. I'm Dominique Gates. I'm joined by longtime Packers columnist Tom Silverstein. Spoon, there's plenty that we can check in with on this Wednesday. Of course, there's been some things circulating on social media about Jaire Alexander and his future. From what you've been doing some digging on, I guess what can you tell us as of this Wednesday?
Yeah, I would say that the Packers and Jaire Alexander are about to part ways. Whether that's a trade or a release, I don't know. I think, there was a report from NFL Network that the Packers had been shopping him. I'm not sure it's quite in that degree, but I do think there probably have been some teams wondering, are they going to trade him? And I'm sure Brian Gutekunst is sort of gauging the interest and seeing what people say. I don't know whether there's going to be enough interest. I think they would trade him to the right team. They're not going to trade him to Minnesota or Chicago or Detroit or San Francisco or Philadelphia or Dallas so if some AFC team is interested. But teams know that they're probably going to part ways, and so it'll be hard to get a draft pick. Now, it's something they probably just need to do amicably. Alexander's been hurt. He didn't ask for a trade. I think he was more than willing to come back, but I think both sides know that it's probably just over, you know.
Yeah, especially with all the injuries and everything that
Right.
just kind of come about. And I mean, it's not like he was a 1 or 2 year guy. Sometimes you can kind of run your course after playing certain years on a team.
8 years, yeah, that's a long time to play in the league. So
Yeah. And for you, I don't know if you have the numbers like on the top of your head, but as far as like with the cap space and just everything that's kind of in line with the Packers, if there is a trade or release, just can you kind of break that all down?
yeah, so he's currently counting about 16.5 million against the cap, or 17, something like that, and most of that would go away. Well, actually, all of that would go away. Plus, they would gain 6 million as a result of releasing or trading him. So that would be if they did it right away. If they did it on the first day of free agency and declared him a June cut, they could get even more cap space, but they don't really need it. So, yeah, they're going to get 6 million. Now, the thing they got to do is turn around and spend it in free agency and find a corner. I mean, they absolutely have to find a corner. The one scenario where you could see Alexander coming back is the Packers sit there and don't get anybody in free agency, and they panic, and then they're like, okay, just come back. You're under contract. Let's figure this out. I would think that's the one opportunity for him to come back. But yeah, they're going to have to get somebody.
Yeah, so that's just really going to be interesting and what could come about. But I guess now we kind of move ahead and talk about the combine as we've been here. There's obviously a lot of players today. We're a lot about like defensive linemen and guys that at least we've been trying to keep an eye out on it because it could be a potential, you could say, position that the Packers might explore. Yeah. You've met some interesting guys on this Wednesday. Who were some that you kind of met and talked to?
Yeah, well, the one who stood out, and I kind of sought him out, was Donovan Izuruku.
Good job.
Yeah, close, close. I don't think that was perfect.
Yeah.
But he led the nation in sacks with 16 and a half. He plays for Boston College, and of course he was recruited by Jeff Hafley. Asked him a little bit about that, if it, what it's going to be like to interview with him, because the Packers are definitely going to talk to him at some point. They haven't talked to him here yet, but you can bet that Hafley will talk to him. In fact, he had already had. Izuruku said that they have talked recently. So I think he's on the Packers' radar. I don't know if he's going to make it into the first round, if he's a first-round pick. I think the Packers will have a shot at him, with their first-round pick, or if they move back. But he's an explosive guy. He's different than what they have. He's really quick off the line of scrimmage. He's a smaller guy. He's not like Rashawn Gary, 270 pounds. He's 230, 245 pounds maybe, and he thinks he can play 265. But, he was a pretty decent run defender at Boston College. So, I'm really interested to see him run. He's one of the guys who, if he puts up a really good number, his stock will will rise. And then we saw a bunch of other guys who are going to be, candidates for the Packers to take, from Kenneth Grant in Michigan and James Pierce from Tennessee and Mike Green from Marshall. And I mean, there are a lot of good defensive linemen in this draft. That's a strength, one of the strengths of the draft. And so it'll be, you know, they can go for an inside guy, they can go for an outside guy. The draft is pretty full with both of them.
Yeah. One thing I guess that impressed me and stood out was just these are some very confident guys. I don't know if maybe it's because they were like, oh, well, I was really good at a Georgia or an Alabama,
Right.
just a different monster in the NFL. And this is just more of getting your perspective on it in terms of what maybe the Packers would be looking for here. When you're looking at the D line, they talked a lot about that pass rush and how it needs to be better, and they would like to send four. Do you think they would be able to kind of afford with having maybe a younger guy and hoping the TJ Slaytons and the Wyatts and all those guys of the world get better? Or, how do you think they might even would like to explore that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the cases where they could take an edge rusher type with a smaller body that, as Brian Gutekunst pointed out, and I thought this was pretty smart, they love those guys, but what happens when there's injuries and, Kingsley Enagbari can't play and this guy has to play 50 snaps against a 320-pound tackle? He's going to get worn down, he's going to get hurt, and so that's kind of their trepidation with taking guys like that. But, they're pretty deep, so they can kind of afford to take a guy who comes off the edge and isn't a 270-pound guy. So I definitely think whoever they take is going to play. There's no question about it. They've got to get pass rush, and they got to find someone who can get to the quarterback.
So definitely will be interesting to see, and there also will be corners that will be here talking as well. So there's still plenty of position groups that will kind of be spotlighted over the next couple of days here in Indianapolis. But that's all for now from the NFL Combine. For Tom Silverstein, I'm Dominique Yates.